Market Mantra. Market Mantra. Market Mantra. Market Mantra. Market Mantra. Market Mantra.
Welcome to this Wednesday's edition of Market Mantra, the program in which we give you a complete update on the economic, business and stock market news of the day. I'm Arjun Chaudhary and with me is my co-anchor in Hindi, Vishal Sharma.
नमस्कार, मार्केट मंत्र में आप सभी का बहुत बहुत स्वागत। प्रतिदिन की तरह आज भी हम देश और दुनिया से आर्थिक, व्यापारिक और शेयर बाजार के ताजा समाचार आप तक लाएंगे और उन पर चर्चा भी करेंगे। चर्चा के लिए आज स्टूडियो में आमंत्रित हैं बाजार विशेषज्ञ शिशिर सिन्हा। शिशिर जी नमस्कार, कार्यक्रम में आपका स्वागत।
नमस्कार, बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद।
और सबसे पहले हेडलाइंस के साथ हैं अर्जुन चौधरी।
At the stock markets, falling for the fourth straight day, Sensex slides by 928 points and Nifty slips by 272 points. Indian Council of Agriculture Research develops a new variety of wheat which can withstand change in weather pattern and rising heat levels. And government says digital transformation journey in the country is remarkable in the last 8 years and has become a model for the world.
घरेलू शेयर बाजारों में लगातार चौथे दिन गिरावट का रुख। सेंसेक्स 928 अंक लुढ़का, निफ्टी 272 अंक फिसला। भारतीय कृषि अनुसंधान परिषद ने मौसम में बदलाव और बढ़ती गर्मी की समस्या का सामना करने में सक्षम गेहूं की नई किस्म विकसित की। और सरकार ने कहा देश में पिछले 8 वर्षों में डिजिटल बदलाव उल्लेखनीय रहा है और ये दुनिया के लिए एक मॉडल है। सबसे पहले बात कार्यक्रम में शेयर बाजार की। घरेलू शेयर बाजारों में आज लगातार चौथे दिन गिरावट रही। बॉम्बे स्टॉक एक्सचेंज का सेंसेक्स 1.5% के नुकसान से 928 अंक लुढ़ककर 59,745 पर बंद हुआ। नेशनल स्टॉक एक्सचेंज का निफ्टी भी 1.5% गिरकर 272 अंक नीचे 17,554 पर आ गया। व्यापक बाजार में बीएसई मिड कैप इंडेक्स 1.2% और स्मॉल कैप इंडेक्स 1.1% की गिरावट के साथ बंद हुए।
At the stock markets, falling for the fourth straight day, Sensex at the BSE slide by 928 points, so 1.5% to close at 59,745 today. Nifty at the National Stock Exchange slid by 272 points, so 1.5% to 17,554. In the broader market, the BSE mid-cap index lost 1.2% and the small-cap index declined by 1.1%. Sectorally, on the Bombay Stock Exchange, the utilities index was the leading loser, slumping 2.3%. Commodities plunged by 2.2%. Power index declined 2.1%. Realty lost 1.8%. Metal and financial services dropped 1.7% each. BankX slid 1.6%. Energy slid 1.5%. Industrials lost 1.3%. Capital goods, consumer discretionary and the oil and gas indices fell by 1.2% each. Auto, IT and tech declined by 1.1% each. Consumer durables and telecom slipped 1% each and the healthcare index shed 0.5%. Shishir, what's your take on the market? Today we have some data regarding the net buyers and sellers in the equity market. The FIIs were the net sellers by 580 crore rupees and the DIIs were the net buyers of 371 crore rupees. Yet the market fell by more than 900 points, 928 in fact to be precise. If we look at the Sensex, what were the factors behind this fall in the market today?
See, the most important factor was US-Russia tension escalation. That's a global situation which is not giving any kind of positive news to the Indian market. That is the most important reason. The other thing is that when we are talking about US-Russia tension, that is also giving a fear that the domestic inflation will go up. In the month of January, we saw retail inflation based on consumer price index at 6.52%. Some people said that it may be a blip. But considering the situation in the geopolitical, in the global economy, there is an apprehension that the domestic inflation rate may go up further, and that will increase. That will lead to the possibility of another rate hike in the month of April when the MPC will meet for the first time in the next fiscal year. So these are some of the regions which brought more, what you can say, more bears in the market than the bulls. and we saw 4th successive day of stock market loss. And please remember, during the 4 days, investors' wealth has been eroded by 6.97 lakh crore rupees. That's a huge amount, number one. Number two, 266 stocks are at 52-week low. So we also need to take these data also along with the Sensex and Nifty to give a more broader idea about the market to the our listeners.
जी शिशिर जी, पिछले कुछ समय से जो हम अनिश्चितता देख रहे हैं बाजार में, और साथ ही साथ जिस तरीके से ब्याज दरें बढ़ी हैं जमाओं पर, तो उससे आपको लगता है कि खुदरा निवेशक भी बाजार से दूरी बना रहा है?
देखिए, एक तो वजह आपकी बात कुछ हद तक ये सही है, लेकिन बाजार में बिकवाली की एक बड़ी वजह जो है, जैसा कि अभी अर्जुन जो डेटा दे रहे थे एफआईआईज का, जो कि नंबर ये बता रहा है कि वो नेट बायर रहे, माफ कीजिएगा नेट सेलर रहे, यानी कि उन्होंने विशुद्ध रूप से बिकवाली करी। क्योंकि अमेरिकी फेडरल रिजर्व का जो है आज एक कमेंट्री आने वाला है, और उस कमेंट्री से ये पता चलेगा कि आने वाले दिनों में वो ब्याज दर को लेकर के क्या रुख अपनाते हैं। और ये परिस्थिति ऐसी अगर बनती है कि जब वो ब्याज दरें और बढ़ाएं, तो इसका नुकसान ये होगा कि जो हमारे विदेशी निवेशक जिन्होंने यहां पैसा लगा रखा है, वो यहां से और ज्यादा पैसे निकाल सकते हैं। तो एक तरफ जैसा आपने कहा कि घरेलू बैंकों में या घरेलू वित्तीय संस्थाओं में ब्याज दरें ज्यादा हैं, तो लोग शेयर बाजार के मुकाबले उन जगहों पर पैसा लगा रहे हैं, और दूसरी तरफ विदेशी निवेशक जो हैं वो बाहर इसलिए पैसा ले जा रहे हैं क्योंकि उनको अमेरिका में ज्यादा ब्याज मिल रहा है। तो ये दो वजह है जिसकी वजह से आप देख रहे हैं कि बाजार की स्थिति थोड़ी बिगड़ी हुई है।
So are you saying that the debt returns from treasury yields, we're talking about bonds, notes from and bills from the US Treasury, is a greater inducement, incentive for the investors? They're moving away from equity into the debt market, especially in the US, because of the high yield. We're seeing more than 5% return on some of the treasury securities. Is that the real motivation for what's happening in the equity markets right now?
In terms of FII, this is the real motivation, because and every time you will see when the US Fed is hiking the rate, people are taking away money from here, and not just from India. You also talk about the other emerging economies. They are also withdrawing from the other emerging economies, other Asian markets too. So India is not the isolated case. India is one of the country where the investment are still happening, but not at that pace what we are expecting because of the Federal Reserve action. The most important thing is that we need to keep an eye on what the Federal Reserve commentary will be for the coming few months, and that commentary will decide that whether Federal Reserve will continue aggressively on the interest rate front, because what they are seeing that despite interest rate hike, employment generation is good, companies are producing more, market is expanding, credit is expanding. So the kind of impact which people were apprehending, Federal Reserve is not seeing on the ground, and that is why they are going for rate hike to curb the inflation, because for them the most important task is to check the inflation rate, and they can go to any extent if these factors are in the positive territory.
So we're looking at treasuries right now in the money market, where the yield is procured within 1 year of the investment. 6 months US treasuries more than 5%. You have 1 year treasuries again at more than 5%, and the 2-year treasuries are touching 5% at 4.7 right now. The 10-year ones are at 4%. If that is an incentive for the FIIs to divert their investment from equity to debt and pull out the investment from emerging markets like India, what about the RBI bonds? So what are they offering in terms of returns, which is motivating DIIs also to rethink what their portfolio should be? Should it be just equity based or a mix of equity and debt?
See, in India, the situation is quite different from the US. If you see the banks and financial institutions, there is a capping on investing in equity. So for them, the higher investment is already in the debt instrument. So it is not that they have to shift their allocation from equity to debt. In US, the situation is quite different. There is no capping like that. What we are seeing in India. So what you are seeing that domestic institutionals or the banks and the insurance companies, they are putting money in the equity within the limit prescribed by their regulator, whether it is RBI or whether it is the IRDA. And at the same time, they are also looking for other investment opportunities, like what we are seeing that sovereign green bond has given a very good return. In fact, the listing which happened just a day before, that has also given good return. So they are looking for the newer instrument, and whether we talk about sovereign green bond, whether we talk about the other, even the long-term dated securities, which are the 40-year dated securities, the kind of interest among the domestic institutional investors are much, much higher. So the allocation is not the issue. The issue is the capping. Since we have a cap for equity market, so their limitation, their investment in equity market will always be limited, and their investment, or rather I say the putting money into the debt market, will always be higher.
जी, कुल मिलाकर के जो हम देख रहे हैं आज अक्रॉस द सेक्टर गिरावट रही है, ज्यादातर सेक्टर्स में आज हम गिरावट देख रहे हैं बाजार में। ऐसी स्थिति में खुदरा निवेशक के सामने क्या विकल्प बचते हैं?
देखिए, इस समय में अगर बैंकों के जमा को देखिए और वहां पर ब्याज दरें जो बढ़ी हैं, वो एक आपको मौका दे रहा है कि आप वहां पर रखें। दूसरा मौका, अगर जो डाकघर की छोटी बचत योजनाएं हैं, चाहे वो आप सुकन्या समृद्धि ले लीजिए, पब्लिक प्रोविडेंट फंड ले लीजिए, या फिर मंथली इनकम स्कीम को ले लीजिए, या इवन की पोस्ट ऑफिस सेविंग अकाउंट को ले लीजिए, जहां पर बैंक में आपको सेविंग अकाउंट पे 2.5% या 2.25% मिलता है, वहीं पोस्ट ऑफिस के सेविंग अकाउंट में आपको 4% का मिलता है। हाँ, ये अलग बात है कि बैंक वाली जो कन्वीनियंस होती है कई बार डाकघरों में लेकर के, उसकी एक चिंता होती है, लेकिन एक छोटा सा फैक्टर है। दूसरी तरफ अगर बाकी आप जो 12 लगभग उनकी जो छोटी बचत योजनाएं हैं उनमें देखें तो वो काफी आकर्षक है। मेरी राय में यह है कि अगर एक खुदरा निवेशक इस समय में अपने पैसे को उन जगह पर रखे जहां पर मूल और ब्याज दोनों में ज्यादा बेहतर उम्मीद है तो रखना चाहिए, क्योंकि जोखिम बहुत ज्यादा उठाना इस समय में उचित नहीं, क्योंकि बाजार बहुत ज्यादा जिसे कहा जाए उतार चढ़ाव के दौर में है और खुदरा निवेशकों के लिए इस बाजार में आने का अभी मौका नहीं बन रहा है। हाँ, और गिरावट आती है, कुछ एक जो क्वालिटी स्टॉक्स होते हैं उनको वो खरीद सकते हैं, लेकिन मैक्सिमम एलोकेशन इस तरह के माहौल में उन जगहों पर जाना चाहिए जहां पर मूल और ब्याज शेयर बाजार की तुलना में ज्यादा सुरक्षित नजर आए।
Shishir, Bank Nifty fell by 700 points today. Their quarterly results have not quite met expectations, but they have the advantage of a reverse repo rate at 3.35% and a repo rate at 6.5%, which gives a very high net interest income to the banks, especially PSU banks who have recovered and brought down the NPA levels. So how do you see the MPC committee meeting redress the deposit rate that my co-anchor was asking about, and the prospect for Bank Nifty, especially after the MPC meeting and before that?
In fact, you also need to add one more instrument, which is the marginal standing facility, which is available at 6.25%. So if you take the repo rate at 6.5% and marginal standing facility at 6.25%, and marginal standing facility has one big advantage where you do not have to tender your securities. So that is giving advantage. So banks are moving more towards the marginal standing facility than the reverse repo.
Because it's not collateralized.
It's not a collateralized. So this is one advantage there, and banks are moving into that. Now the problem is that since last 6 hike, we have seen 6 hikes in the repo rate, and total hike is 250 basis point or 2.5%. The deposit rates have also gone up. Now the problem is that you cannot go beyond a certain level, because that will also hurt your the pricing of the loan. Because if you increase the price of the loan, then there is an apprehension that people may not go to take a loan. So that will affect your business model. So that is why that fear is gripping that banking sector, and that is why you are seeing that the BANEX has down by more than 700 points, because that fear is that net interest margin may not be same what we have seen during the last 2 or 3 quarters. There is a famous article today which I was going through, and which says that the honeymoon period for the banking sector is over. They cannot have good quarter again. And the other thing is that when the MPC will meet again in the month of April, another rate hike is expected because of the inflation rate. And more important, rather than we look at the headline inflation, if we go to the core inflation, which is more sticky and sticking around 6%, that is giving some kind of discomfort to the Monetary Policy Committee, and that is also going to hurt the net interest margin in terms of if you increase the deposit rate and if you also increase the loan rate, then the credit growth may not be the same what we are seeing during the last 3-4 quarters.
जी, मुद्रास्फीति का जो परिदृश्य है वैश्विक स्तर पर भी देखें तो आपको लगता है कि ये बहुत जटिल होता जा रहा है?
देखिए, भारत के संदर्भ में दो चीजों को हम लोग ध्यान रखते हैं। एक है आपका कच्चा तेल और एक है आपका खाने का तेल। हम लोग कच्चे तेल पे तो बहुत चर्चा करते हैं, खाने के तेल पे कम चर्चा करते हैं। अब इस समय में अगर आप देखिए कि तापमान बढ़ रहा है और तापमान बढ़ने के दौर में हम ज्यादा चर्चा कर रहे हैं गेहूं की, लेकिन सरसों की भी चर्चा करना जरूरी है, जिसकी बुआई तो अच्छे इलाके में हुई है, लेकिन पैदावार पे असर पड़ सकता है अगर तापमान बहुत ज्यादा बढ़ जाता है। तो अगर तापमान बढ़ा तो खाने के तेल की कीमतों पर भी असर पड़ेगा। और खाने के तेल की एक अलग ही कैरेक्टरिस्टिक्स है, एक अलग ही उसकी कह लीजिए विशेषता है कि ये पूरे पैक में बढ़ता है। आप भले ही सरसों का तेल आप आयात नहीं करते हैं, आप आयात करते हैं पाम करते हैं, आप सूरजमुखी करते हैं, बाकी चीजों का करते हैं, लेकिन अगर एक का दाम बढ़ेगा तो बाकी तीन के भी बढ़ेंगे, चाहे वो सूरजमुखी हो, चाहे सोयाबीन का हो, चाहे वो सरसों का हो। तो ये खाने के तेल जो है वो हमारे लिए एक और परेशानी का सबब बन रहा है। देखिए, अगर आप कच्चे तेल की बात करिएगा, क्रूड ऑयल की बात करिएगा, तो वो 80, 81, 82 के आसपास में ही चल रहा है। उसमें ज्यादा आप उतार चढ़ाव नहीं देखेंगे। ज्यादा उतार चढ़ाव हम बाकी चीजों में देख रहे हैं, कमोडिटी प्राइसेस में देख रहे हैं। तो मुद्रास्फीति में अभी की परिस्थिति में आप देखें कि बाहर से आने वाली जो कहें कीमत, वो हमारे लिए काफी ज्यादा है। और अगर मैं जनवरी महीने के आंकड़े को देखूं तो एक सीरियल्स हो गया, अनाज, दूसरा आपका जो बहुत ज्यादा आपको शायद हैरान कर सकता है, मसाले की महंगाई दर काफी ज्यादा है। तीसरा, इसके अलावा अगर आप देखेंगे तो फुटवेयर और टेक्सटाइल की भी महंगाई दर ज्यादा है। तो अब मसाले की महंगाई दर पे भी आपको नियंत्रण करना है। आप कहेंगे कि इसका वेटेज कम है, इसलिए इसका बहुत ज्यादा असर नहीं पड़ता है, लेकिन अगर छोटा हो लेकिन बड़ी उसमें उछाल देखने को मिल रहे तो वो हेडलाइन पे भी असर डालता है। तो हमारे लिए इस समय परेशानी है कि महंगाई दर की पूरी परिस्थितियां जो हैं वो वैश्विक स्तर पर ज्यादा हमें प्रभावित कर रही हैं घरेलू स्तर के बजाय।
So the wholesale price index is what we need to look at, 4.73% right now. You mentioned about the Rabi crop. It was sown successfully in winter, but this unexpected heat, the temperature rise means that the harvest in spring would be affected. Is that really sowing the seeds of uncertainty in the market right now? Volatility has gone up by 11%?
Certainly, because the cereal is the major contributor in your inflation rate, headline inflation rate. And now the problem is that because of the higher temperature, wheat harvesting will be affected, and the another thing, even if you have a good production, the flour extraction from the wheat grain will be much lesser because of the smaller size of the of the wheat. So that is another problem we have to keep in mind, that we will see, okay, the wheat production has gone up by say 10 lakh ton or 20 lakh ton, but the actual extraction from the wheat in terms of flour, that will be less. And that is also a concern which we need to keep in mind.
Briefly, what's your take when market opens tomorrow? Now we have interest rate derivatives also. The market timings have gone up to 5 p.m.
We need to keep an eye on the Fed commentary, which is expected any moment from now. That commentary will decide what will be the direction tomorrow morning.
जी, और अब रुक करते हैं वैश्विक शेयर बाजारों का। एशियाई शेयर बाजारों की बात करें तो अमेरिकी शेयर बाजारों में तेज गिरावट के बाद आज एशियाई शेयर बाजारों में भी नरमी रही। जापान का निकेई 1.4% लुढ़क गया। चीन का शंघाई कंपोजिट इंडेक्स और हांगकांग का हैंगसेंग दोनों में 0.5% की गिरावट रही। दक्षिण कोरिया का कोस्पी 1.7% फिसल गया और सिंगापुर का स्ट्रेट्स टाइम्स इंडेक्स 0.3% के नुकसान के साथ बंद हुआ। यूरोपीय शेयर बाजारों में अंतर्दिवसीय कारोबार के दौरान लंदन के FTSE 100 में 1% की गिरावट दिख रही थी। फ्रांस का कैक 40 और जर्मनी का डेक्स 0.8% के नुकसान में चल रहे थे।
Moving on to the U.S. stock markets, Wall Street posted its worst performance of the year yesterday, with the key indices ending lower as investors interpreted a rebound in U.S. business activity in February to mean interest rates need to stay higher for longer to control inflation. The falls came after the S&P Global Purchasing Manufacturers Index, which reflects business activity in the U.S., returned to expansion for the first time in 8 months in February. The 50.2 reading for February was buoyed by a robust services sector, according to a survey. The report added to a recent slew of economic data. which had painted a picture of a resilient economy. The Dow Jones Industrial Average declined 697 points or 2.1% to 33,130. With this fall, the Dow wiped out all its gains of 2023. Both the S&P 500 and the Nasdaq fell for the third straight session, with the S&P 500 losing 82 points or 2% to end at 3,997, and the Nasdaq Composite slipping 295 points or 2.5% to 11,492. Meanwhile, investors will look to the minutes of the Fed's last policy meeting, which releases today for further clues on attitudes within the central bank on rates. Shishir, you've spoken about the Fed policy meeting, the minutes that need to be looked at before one can take informed judgment on how the market is going to behave tomorrow. But with the US Fed raising interest rates, it's providing an incentive for FIIs to divert the investment, buy into treasuries, and that's putting money into the pockets of the US government. Are they motivated by further inflow of dollar as opposed to keeping interest rates low? The policy has changed. What do you expect the FIIs to behave as? Would they continue to be motivated by the bond market, or do you see any hope for revival of the equities also?
As of now, we are not seeing that revival because the other situations for the equity market are not so positive. So it is not just the factor. The Federal Reserve is not the factor but a factor. But that a factor is very important. So the other factors, if we take the inflation scenario, if we take the geopolitical tension, these are not favorable. So the FII will look for the safer investment thing, and that safer investment will be the US Treasury. And of course, they are getting more in terms of, or what you can also add, more secured one and the insured one. So that is why they will go for those kind of instrument where there is a possibility of getting the return at a fixed rate, rather than going for the return, going for the instrument where the uncertainties are very high. So I personally believe that we will see more selling by FIIs during coming days, and maybe after this G20 meeting. Also, we need to keep an eye on the declaration which is expected on Saturday, that what kind of, because all the G20, in fact, tomorrow US Treasury Secretary Ms. Yellen is going to address the press conference. So she is also going to talk about what kind of policy US will have. So all these things will keep or what you can say determine what kind of market scenario we will see next week, not this week, because this week the action is almost same. We will see more selling by not just by the FII but also some of the domestic investors who want to take advantage of strengthening their balance sheet.
So Bank of England is in line with the US Fed Reserve, but the Bank of Japan and the Bank of China move their own ways. How do you see the Asian markets, broadly speaking, reacting to what's happening in the US?
See, Chinese central bank, it is very difficult to predict what the Chinese central bank will do, and their action is totally different from what the other central banks are doing. Japanese central bank, they are doing something which is very unusual, because the interest rate in Japan was in a negative, was at zero level for a longer time. So now they need to push up that interest rate. So for raising the interest rate there, we are not finding anything unusual. If we talk about Bank of England, so Britain is in a very bad shape in terms of the economic condition. We are seeing some kind of recession in UK and also in Europe. So that is why Bank of England is trying to make a balance between the growth requirement as well as the curbing the inflation, because the inflation rate is also very high. But among all these, US Federal Reserve is most important, because that directs what the other central banks should do. And that is why we need to keep an eye on what the Federal Reserve is going to give the direction.
जी, और अब अगली खबर, भारतीय कृषि अनुसंधान परिषद ICAR ने गेहूं की एक नई किस्म विकसित की है जो मौसम में बदलाव और बढ़ती गर्मी के कारण उत्पन्न होने वाली चुनौतियों का सामना करने में सक्षम है। गेहूं की इस नई किस्म को HD 3385 नाम दिया गया है। नई किस्म जल्द बुआई के लिए अनुकूल है और ये गर्मी के प्रकोप से बची रह सकती है। साथ ही साथ इसकी फसल मार्च खत्म होने से पहले ली जा सकती है। ICAR के प्रधान वैज्ञानिक राजबीर यादव ने आकाशवाणी समाचार से बातचीत में बताया कि गेहूं की इस नई किस्म की खूबियों के बारे में किसान इसकी बुआई करके अच्छी फसल ले सकते हैं। केंद्र सरकार ने तापमान वृद्धि से उत्पन्न स्थिति और गेहूं की वर्तमान फसल पर इसके प्रभाव की निगरानी के लिए हाल ही में एक समिति गठित करने की घोषणा की थी। अभी हम शिशिर बात कर रहे थे कि गर्मी और रबी रबी की फसल पर जो उसका असर देखा जा रहा है, अब ये जो नई किस्म ICAR ने जो विकसित की है, क्या ये एक आशा की किरण दिखाती है, जगाती है इस पूरे परिदृश्य में?
देखिए, निश्चित तौर पर इस तरह के जब कोई उत्पाद, ऐसी कोई परियोजना हमारे यहाँ आती है जो ये बताती है कि बढ़ते तापमान का इनके ऊपर असर उस तरीके का नहीं होगा, तो ये एक उम्मीद की किरण है। लेकिन याद रखिए कि ये सिर्फ और सिर्फ एक किरण है, स्रोत नहीं है।
जी।
Let's move on to a third headline story now. Government has said that the digital transformation journey of India has been remarkable in the last 8 years and has become a model for the world. Secretary, Ministry of Electronics and IT, Alkesh Kumar Sharma said this while addressing a seminar on artificial intelligence and data analytics in New Delhi today, organized by the Controller and Auditor General of India. He said the government will soon launch the India Data Platform as a unified data access platform for catalyzing artificial intelligence research and innovation. Mr. Sharma said India is the third largest artificial intelligence ecosystem in the world. He said AI has improved the public service delivering and enhanced efficiency and innovation. Speaking on the occasion, Controller and Auditor General of India, Girish Chandra Murmu, said digital transformation and AI were rapidly becoming the center of attention for public sector enterprises. He said the government has launched the digital initiative which seeks to transform India into digitally empowered society and a knowledge economy. And now moving on to the oil market and the precious metals market as well. Global crude oil prices fell for a third trading session today as concerns about fuel demand were stoked by expectations that minutes of the US Fed meeting due today will indicate a need to hike interest rates. So Brent crude futures for April delivery fell and declined by $1.13 to trade at $81.92 a barrel. The US crude futures for April dropped $1.18 to $75.18 a barrel. Sushil, how is it that the futures market is taking into account what's happening in the US Fed, just for the benefit of our listeners, because it does get converted into a spot market price?
Of course, see, whatsoever action, they all are interlinked. Whether we talk about gold, whether we talk about crude, whether we talk about other commodities, and also we talk about the interest rate, they all are interlinked. Just take the example of gold. Whenever there is a slump in the stock market, you will see that the gold price is going up. So that's a common thread between these two. When the market is seeing more interest rate hike, then there will be some impact on the global crude prices in terms of the softening of that thing, because there will be that demand will be affected, there will be lesser demand. So that is why the prices will slightly come down, and that is what we are seeing, that the crude prices are something hovering around 81, 82 or $83 a barrel. So that is a good news for a country like India, and also we need to keep in mind that we are importing large quantity from Russia, which is offering crude at a discount. So these two things are very beneficial for India. But overall, the global economy, when the crude prices are down, then there is an apprehension that the OPEC plus country, they will go for the production cut, so that their margins should not be impacted. So that is giving an opportunity to those countries to go for the production cut, and that is not a good news for a country like India.
So we're looking at production and price caps depending on whether you're trading with Russia or you're buying it from OPEC itself or OPEC plus for that matter. How does India, very briefly, deal with this?
See, I think India will go for more and more from Russia, because Russia is offering a good discount, and that cap is not affecting that much what we are seeing the impact in the other parts of the world.
जी, और अब बात कीमती धातु की कर लेते हैं। दिल्ली सराफा बाजार में सोना आज 90 रुपए महंगा होकर 56,350 रुपए प्रति 10 ग्राम रहा। चांदी भी 113 रुपए की मजबूती से 66,083 रुपए प्रति किलोग्राम के स्तर पर रही। शिशिर सिन्हा जी, आप कार्यक्रम में शामिल हुए और इतनी उपयोगी चर्चा की, इसके लिए आपका बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद।
धन्यवाद।
And before we close, a reminder of the headlines. At the stock markets falling for the fourth straight day, Sensex slides by 928 points, Nifty slips by 272 points. The Indian Council of Agriculture Research develops a new variety of wheat which can withstand change in the weather pattern and rising heat levels. And the government says digital transformation journey in the country is remarkable in the last 8 years and has become a model for the world. And that's it in this edition of Market Mantra for now. Goodbye.
नमस्कार.
Market Mantra, Mantra. Market Mantra.